Greetings, everyone. Thank you for tuning into my presentation on the OSI model graphic presentation. And the OSI model, I will talk about what that stands for in a minute. So, who is my target audience for this? My target audience for this lesson is college graduates, particularly those who are information technology or computer science engineer majors, high school students who are learning about information technology, college seniors in particular, and I'll explain why in a minute, career transitioners, and for future network administrators. So college graduates and those who are seniors, I am noticing a gap in their knowledge and understanding of the OSI model. So I have a particular group of student workers who are graduating in 6 months who have never heard of the OSI model. So the likelihood of that, I'm not sure. I was not a computer science major in college. But I can tell you this as an IT professional, for them not to know what the OSI model is, I find very disconcerting and alarming. However, I do realize they could have had these courses early on in their college career and they just forgot about those. And so I'm hoping that a particular slide that I have will activate their mental models and will just give them long-term memory recall that will help. Also for career transitioners, so I run into a lot of people who I mentor who are either veterans of the United States Armed Forces, those people who are career transitioners, so retirees who are looking for a different opportunity in the latter phase of their career, especially if you retire from the military after 20 years, you're pretty much 38 years old and can start a brand new career. And then for future network administrators, so those people who are working right now in a help desk role or a desktop support role who want to further their learning so they can one day become junior network administrators, or security analysts. This target audience is for them. What is the OSI model? The OSI model, which stands for Open Systems Interconnect, so how systems relate one to another, is a framework that shows how information flows from one network device to another, or one computer to another, one cell phone to another. Now, I know Ruth Clark tells us that decorative graphics lessen learning. I get it. I know what this is. What I'm hoping is that for those who have somewhat experience in this area of information technology, also understand what the mental models are that they are engaging upon. And so this laser I have here shows you the starting point, let's say, of a message. And with that starting point, you see the laser here. That is a flag that stands for the start, like a pole position, and then how that data transverses different communication devices, and then you see me close out with the starter flag here with the in the race flag. That's what that is representative of. Again, I know this could really be cognitive overload for a lot of people, especially if you're new. If I was teaching this in an actual setting, I would have this exact representation at the end of explaining everything, but I would have some words in here, probably some smaller symbols in here, smaller icons, just to really draw their learning in so they can then associate a word with a particular device or a particular area of where data transfers from one end to the other. And of course, this works in reverse mode as well for their learning. So there's a mnemonic. We learned about mnemonics as part of our classes. Part of these mnemonics is coming up with words or acronyms to help you remember what the OSI model is. And so that OSI starts at layer 1, which is presentation, and then ends at layer 7, which is application. So please do not throw sausage pizza away. It's just a mnemonic that was come up with. It's still used highly to this day across the technology world. This mnemonic is probably over 40 years old by now. So that's what people use to at least learn how to associate the models, and then they get into the inner workings of the model. So this is what we would teach. This is what I would teach new beginners coming in. I would first throw up the mnemonic. Please do not throw sausage pizza away. And you can come up with any phrase that you want to. That's how we empower students to learn and let them know they can do this any way that they desire as well. But That's typically how we start. The next part of the presentation that I want to get into is the meat of the graphics, one that I chose to redesign. So on the right, you have the Splunk OSI model. And then on the left, you have my OSI model that I redesigned based off of Splunk. So that came straight out of one of our assignments. And so you can see the differences here, which is highly related to color more than text, or icons more than text. But we'll get into that because I separated these graphics out because I didn't want you to have to worry about flipping back and forth, seeing them side by side. So if we go into this model, this is hierarchy grouped. Yes, it is, but it lacks functional meaning cues. It's good for review, but it's not good for instruction. An example of this is you can see you have the hardware layers on the bottom left. In the middle, you have what they call the heart of the OSI model, which is the transport layer. And then you have the software layers. But if I'm looking at this as a visual learner, and if I'm going off of color, I can see where I could easily misalign each of these colors because they do not synchronize together well. They all look the same to me. So there's no distinction between the color of the hardware layer, the heart of the OSI model, or the software layer. There's no distinction between the OSI model as represented here by one color that I can perceive as pink or fuchsia, right? So it's good, it's neat, it's clear, but does it add any value to instruction? It does not add any value to instruction from my lens, especially without the functional meaning cues. So I found this presentation, this particular graphic, rather plain, which plain is good. We don't want to go back to the previous slide I showed with all the icons all over the place. Don't want to do that. But if you look at this, you should be able to see a representation of what the possibilities could be in a graphic had it been redesigned. So here is my redesign of the OSI model. My redesign, I look to capture a different presentation, a different way to take the idea of what was presented in the Splunk, and then to be able to look at this graphic and lower the cognitive load for them having to figure out what each of these layers do, and then use icons to stimulate long-term recall. So again, if I go back to those college students who are graduating in 6 months, they may not recognize the OSI model in total, but if they look at these in part, they can say, oh, you're talking about the network layer. Oh, I see the link. You're talking about the data link layer. So the icons that are represented here give you a different sense of connection. So if you've got a prior learning mental model that you're driving from, if you want that LM, that long-term memory activated, here's where LM comes into play, because now you have something to associate each layer of what you're getting into. This is how I would teach the OSI model to a brand new group of people. And so we start with the physical layer, with a device. That's something physical that you can touch, that you can put your hand on. We go to the data link layer. That's another part that you can put your hands on. So these icons, look at this information and you see the distinction between the hardware layer. They're all yellow. The transport layer is a solid color. And then you have the software layers that are all solid colors, representing being the receiver of information versus the latter being the sender of information. And there's a train that is used to identify what the mediation layer or that transport layer is and does, and its role to transport information up and down through the OSI model. That's what that is. These icons are here representative of each layer. It's hard for you to see the key here, but you can see the presentation layer of software, and then you get to see the application layer of software. And so I believe that my particular model is different from the previous graphic because you really get to see the distinction and the correlation and the relation. My sender and receiver path are very visual. Their groups are layered, and the mental models that are put here are good for learning, as opposed to the plain graphic that looks good, that looks neat, that is put together well, but it doesn't necessarily give you any of the tools or indication of what it's for. So that's the breadth of my presentation when it comes to teaching the OSI model and that learning demographic, who I would teach that to. And here are some resources, and the last resources from Professor Messer, Understanding the OSI Model. Professor Messer is a leading expert in the CompTIA certification realm, Security Plus certification realm, and he really believes that if you learn and master the OSI model, you can be successful in any part of your IT field and your IT career. That is my time. Thank you.